Hopefully no one has any objections. I just hit the recording.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Mafaro. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jay Ashford. I am the secretary of the IIBA Bay Area Chapter, and we are delighted to have Ahmer Inam with us tonight, and we will get to him in a moment. I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I just wanted to recognize Mafaro, our chapter president, Arceli, our vice president, and Larry, our treasurer. I also want to welcome Harvey from the Phoenix chapter. Thank you for joining us. Okay, without just a couple quick public service announcement. For those of you who may not be familiar, IIBA, we are a local community. Our Bay Area chapter is a local community of business analysis professionals. That's kind of a wide umbrella, if you will. It includes business analysts, data analysts, product owners, process analysts, and several other roles that sort of fall under the large umbrella of business analysis. IIBA globally has about 29,000 members across 120 chapters scattered across the world. And our goals really as a chapter, as part of a global community, are to build community of like-minded professionals to advance the practice of business analysis in all its various flavors, and finally to promote career growth and opportunities for our members. And please feel free to visit us at bayarea.iiba.org. And without further ado, it is my privilege to welcome Ahmer Inam. He's the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer and Chief Product Strategist at Pactera Edge, which is a leading global human-centric intelligent digital platforms and solutions firm. Ahmer has more than 20 years of experience driving organizational transformation with intelligent digital products and solutions. His experience includes data and analytics leadership roles at Nike, Wells Fargo, Sonic Automotive, and Cambia Health Solutions. Additionally, he's done analytics advisory work at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ahmer is a member of the Forbes Technology Council, serves as a member of the Brain Trust at XPRIZE, data and AI expert with the International Institute for Analytics, and as an advisor to multiple startups. Ahmer is also on the joint World Economic Forum and Responsible AI Institute Task Force that is designing the world's first responsible AI certification program. Ahmer is also the founding member of Analytics and Big Data Society and holds 2 Masters of Science degrees, one in Industrial Engineering and one in Economics from Texas A&M University, and a Bachelor in Technology from Mechanical Engineering from the Jamia Millia Islamia Institute in New Delhi. And finally, you can connect with Ahmer using the LinkedIn link shown here. And rumor has it that in spite of all these accomplishments, he actually gets to sleep once in a while. So welcome, Ahmer, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jay, and then thank you, Sachin, as well. Happy to be part of this conversation. And then thank you for that long. I didn't realize that bio was that long. Sorry about that. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation. And let's definitely connect on LinkedIn for anyone, and we can continue the conversations there. The main thing that I wanted to talk about, and I have a presentation, maybe I can do that. Let me see. Jay, can you make me?
Let me do that. Let me stop sharing really quick, and you can share your screen.
Let's make sure I can share the right screen. Okay, can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would like to talk about today, and since this is a group of business analysts and product owners, And I am a huge fan of basically the business analysis and product ownership, product owners part of the building and developing enterprise solutions. For far too long, technology transformation has been led by waterfall approaches. A lot of the solutions looking for problems. We have seen everything from the chaos report showing that enterprises that initiate large complex projects fail. A lot of the graveyards of ex-CIOs and CDOs out there. And this whole notion of building things, doing a bit more agile approach, taking a product-centric approach versus just a project-oriented approach. I'm very happy to see the evolution of that and the overall organizations and industry kind of embracing that or beginning to embrace that. My journey into the product-led approach to building enterprise solutions kind of started about 10 or so years ago with some early lessons around failures and missteps, and in how human centricity is such a crucial element of building solutions that actually get used. So this story that I'll walk through right now is kind of culmination of many years of my experience and then bringing it all together into a framework that I have designed called Mindful AI, which infuses human-centric design with agile product-centric approaches to building enterprise solutions that actually get adopted and get used and hence drive the value. Hence, acceleration from concept to value using human-centered design-driven machine learning operations that gets into portfolio management and all of those fun things. Quickly, my introduction, Jay already done that. And happy to connect on LinkedIn after this conversation. Just a quick introduction about Pactera Edge, who we are. We are a global digital and technology services company. And what we do is we bring data intelligence and experiences together to deliver human-centered solutions, human-centric solutions for complex business challenges. What does that mean? What that means is that we take a design thinking-led approach, a product-led approach, an empathy-led approach to understand the what and the why, and we co-create and with rapid innovation cycles and validate the fit on the context and relevancy to what we're building, and then we scale the solutions end to end. So that way our success rate for what we build is very high, given that the process that kind of goes through. We have a global footprint, about, decent mid-size solutions and services company with various global locations. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. You can see from my background, that's downtown Portland with Mount Hood in the background there. What I like to talk about this story, when I talk about why human centricity is so important, I like to talk about the story of Ignaz Semmelweis. And I don't know if folks are familiar with Ignaz Semmelweis, but he's considered to be the founder of antibiotics. And why so? So Ignaz Semmelweis was a physician back in Vienna in late 1800s when the death rate for newborn babies in hospitals was extremely high. So you can see in the graph there, the chart there, in some instances, like in mid 1840s, over 30% of newborns were dying immediately after being born. And Ignaz started to think about like what may be the cause of it. This is before Louis Pasteur, so the theory of germ didn't exist. So scientists had no idea there are things called microbes and germs. So Ignaz created at least a new policy. He realized that doctors, these hospitals were also medical colleges, and doctors were working on cadavers, and then from there they were walking in to deliver babies. And what he did was he instituted a new policy for doctors to wash their hands with chlorine before they go to the childbirth. So you can see immediately after that, the death rates went down significantly, right? To nearly like modern standards. And he was like, wow, this is amazing, and discovered something new, and let's add a new process in our medical care, that as doctors shift from one procedure or one room to the other, they have to wash hands with chlorine, not knowing about germs or anything. And guess what happened? The entire hospital system and all the doctors laughed him out of the room. They rejected it wholeheartedly. They did not want to do it. So to the point where Ignaz, he kept trying hard and hard and hard, and it's just such a simple thing to do. Just wash your hand, almost same as like wear your mask these days. And people refuse to do that. And these are doctors. So it actually, sad story, he actually had a lot of mental health issues because of this battle, and then was eventually submitted in an asylum, where within 2 or 3 days of submission, he passed away. Just from all. So in a way, sometimes I say, if there is ever a patron saint of data science or data-driven decision making, it should be Ignaz Semmelweis. So there's actually a metaphor that is named after Ignaz, given this story, which is a type of human behavior that is characterized by reflex-like rejection of new knowledge, because it contradicts existing norms, beliefs, and paradigms. So the whole notion is that, long story short, is that rejection of change is innate in human nature. So if something as simple and as important in saving the lives of newborn cannot make people change their existing norms, how can we imagine that if we build a technology solution in an enterprise, that all of a sudden everybody will be like, wow, this is great and this is amazing, let's use it. And that's a problem engineers face time and day in and day out. Like, we built this amazing thing, why wouldn't you use it? And then people refuse it, right? So organizations continue to waste a lot of money in transformation that do not bring the transformation. And when it comes to AI, it's even, the story is even worse. The benefits of AI, I mean, we all accept it. Again, stories after stories are written, everything from hype to snake oil that's out there. But the reality is, everybody agrees that yes, AI is the future and it's here. Yet the paradox that despite the potential, again, PwC study of $16 trillion to contribute to the GDP by 2030, it's huge numbers, but adoption, it is abysmal. 90% of AI ML initiatives fail adoption, despite all the promise. 70% of out of those that do get adopted, 70% of the models, they don't even evolve. They remain version 1.0, and they drift over time and lose their relevancy. And the number there, 50% of chief data officers fail within the first year of their job. And this is from Gartner, by the way. So the failure rate is very high. And why is that? It's that because embracing AI solution is not just a technology problem, but it's a human problem. Like, we do surveys after survey, research after research. When research is conducted about why the failure rate is so high, those who talk it about the technology problem, only 31%, that my data is not good enough, our data is not clean enough, it's not ready enough. Those are not usually what the problems are. Problem is, we don't trust it. The experience is so bad that we don't know how to use it. If we use it, we'll make mistakes. I don't want to use it because I'm used to Excel, right? Cultural problem, 95, that's biggest. And why? Culture, within the culture, if you peel it up, peel this a little bit more, within that is lack of context and relevancy, right? So in the end, it's more of a human problem versus a technology problem. So, in technology sector, commonly it's said, like, technology sector takes human problems and turns that into a tech problem. In my opinion, that is the problem. Like we have to actually take technology problems and turn them into human problems. Otherwise, this issue will continue to persist. So that creates an opportunity. So how might we unleash the potential of AI to accelerate enterprise ability to grow, innovate, and be more resilient? That is rooted in empathy. That's kind of going back to the Ignaz Semmelweis experience, right? For the people who run it and the people that it serves. So that empathy is for both sides of the equations. Which kind of gives us this framework called Mindful AI that I've co-created. It is the mindset of being aware and purposeful of the intentions and the emotions that we hope to evoke through an AI experience that augments human potential. So augmentation is critical here. It's not replacement, it's augmentation. And if anybody out there says it's going to replace people, they they don't know the quality of the data and where AI is in its journey right now. And a lot of challenges with the AI system that we see today and in any data-driven products is that most automation, industry process automation, be it data-driven, be it hyper-intelligent automation, or within an AI realm, they still take this task orientation. Let's look at the tasks within a process that we do today, and let's figure out how to make it lean and automate it. And that's a task orientation, which is looking at the problem purely from that one frame of reference, and is looking at it as of today's problem. Mindful AI challenges that notion. It challenges us to think about not just what we do, but why do we do what we do? So if the planners are saying, I love using Excel, and then after multiple iterations after iterations, we're designing a new planning system for them, you end up every iteration comes back to an Excel-like, feel. Like, why even design a new system if that's what they want? But it's not so much what they want, but why is it that they love using Excel? Or like what prompts them to, right? So understanding those aspects, right? And why we make the choices that we make, our values and our aspirations. And in this case, which at the end of the day is like mindful AI is about fulfillment for the people that we connect through these digital experiences. So in this Excel example that I talk about, perhaps they like using Excel because it gives them a sense of empowerment, that they can use their own experiences and expertise and do different decision analysis and be able to play with scenarios. So it's not so much that they love the Excel experience, it's the fact that they want to be valued and they want to bring their value into interacting with these solutions that's being designed. So what if we could give them that experience? That is an uplifted experience versus a typical Excel, while bringing more automation so that we can free up their capacity from a time perspective so that people can bring their experience and expertise and then drive better and more optimized decisions versus acting like data monkeys, which is sometimes people say that I feel like I'm just a data monkey. Mindful AI, very high level, human-centered design-based approach with ethics, transparency, and relevancy are crucial to that. 3 pillars: human-centric design, sense of responsibility, and a sense of trustworthiness, kind of truly addressing the reasons behind why AI systems fail the adoption test. Framework essentially is in 4 stages. Discover, which is in gain empathy with the end users to inform the solutioning, and then identify the fit. Go through multiple cycles of learning and designing together, co-creation, right? Very low fidelities. Don't even have to write a single line of code yet, but find that fit, right? Sometimes we call it MLP, to build a minimum lovable product, not just an MVP, but an MLP. Then you prepare the data and build initial models, continuous cycles of validation and iteration, co-creation. And once you nail that fit, then you scale it. And by the time the solution comes to the table, the adoption battle is already won because the people who are going to use it are part of the process in designing and building it. So give an example of a recent client success story from our side. we've been working with a global consumer packaged good leader. They initially came to us saying, oh, we have an ML ops problem, right? And this kind of gets into when people say, I have this problem, is that really the problem, right? So it kind of starts there. So in this case, they're like, oh, we just need an ML ops solution implemented so that our machine learning engineers and DevOps engineers and cloud engineers can collaborate and work together. Right now, they don't feel fulfilled because people are just, everything is asynchronous. Data scientists are being forced to do data engineers' job or ML engineers' job. ML engineers don't feel fulfilled because they're having to recode a lot of the things that data scientists wrote, and they just sense of distrust that is beginning to seep in. So we started to understand and break the problem into people, process, and technology, and then start to understand that again, empathize with the end user. We talk to the end users and like, how do they want to operate? What do they want to do? And as we started to go through that process, we introduced this aspect of human-centered design to engineers, right? It's a new, for many people, it's still a new concept. They've heard about like, oh, this is what UI UX designers do. And then it's more than that. It's a philosophy, kind of like DevOps is a philosophy, right? So it's a philosophy that empowers our teams to design products and services that address the core needs of those who experience a problem. And the focus here is again, addressing the core need of those who experience the problems. In this case, if the data scientists and machine learning engineers are facing a problem, then they are the end user. And any ML pipeline is not going to solve the problem for them unless we understand what the core of that problems are and what are the outcomes that are needed to eliminate those pain points for them. It kind of goes through this cycle of design thinking and lean innovation, multiple cycles. It's a process called FUEL. So we learn, we design, we make, we identify the fit, and then we align and build and deliver, and then scale up. So it's a multiple cycle. It goes through cycles using basically design sprints, 4 days design sprint and 5th day for retrospective and then reset and pivot if needed. So we introduced all of this concept to them, and I said, like, let's go through an exercise to figure out, go deeper, right? Leading with the empathy kind of thing. We did a lot of empathy mapping and different exercises. And we designed this workshop called Mindful AI. And it's really try to understand, like, take people out of day-to-day mundane, because when you talk to people when they are in their environment, they have a hard time thinking strategically because they're already essentially weighed down by day-to-day tactical problems. So when you start those conversations, they nearly always end up being about day-to-day tactical problems. So this whole notion is let's pull people out of their day-to-day mundane and put them into a different framework so they can think strategically. So this framework and this design allows us to think about the art of the possible. Like think about what can be done. So after this fun exercise of like art of the possible, then we actually go through a second exercise, which then brings it a sense of feasibility to it. So it's not just what is possible, but how can we make it happen and establish the outcomes and activities and relationships and propositions, like all of these upfront. So establishing that all upfront before even a code is written, we're still formalizing the idea, right? What should be done and the feasibility of its success. So in this case, when I talked about the Excel-led examples, in this case, when we talk to these data scientists and they were like, oh, we're building these products and these planners don't use it, they always just go back to Excel and then do their own thing, right? And we talk to planners, they're like, oh, I have so much experience, data scientists don't know our business, and there's so many nuances, so much tribal knowledge that I have that they don't have, there is no data, I don't trust this, so I have to use my own intuition. So there is a conflict already there, right? So it's leading with empathy in small doses to understand all of those aspects on how do we uplift and uplevel this whole new experience on how, in this case, this particular company does trade promotions management. So we transform that into trade promotions optimization. So replacement of this Excel-based experience to a more actionable, insights-oriented, that's powered by AI, so that they can, again, instead of managing the trades, they can optimize the trades, right? So as we're designing these experiences, in the meantime, we introduced this whole concept of MLOps to the data science and machine learning engineering team. And in this case, I'm kind of honing it into the DevOps as a philosophy. So it's a practice and set of shared responsibility for collaboration and communications between data scientists, IT ops, and business stakeholders. And this is a definition actually I wrote because there are a lot of MLOps definitions out there. And my personal belief is that it is a shared responsibility across the organization, not just MLOps as it typically gets talked about as just a machine learning CI/CD pipeline, where you build your machine learning models and scale them and then monitor them. And that's why the business stakeholders are crucial aspect of it, because that's where context and relevancy comes into play, right? And then that also then allows us to scale solutions that become enterprise capability and part of the IP for those enterprises. So going into the success. So in MLOps, again, it solves the problem of collaborative development, accelerates enterprise capabilities, and helps make it more efficient for building and scaling an overall AI/ML portfolio with measurable outcomes, which is again part of the, if you go back to this 50% of CDOs fail Gartner report. One of the key reasons they talk about is that CDOs are not able to articulate the value that they are able to drive. And many of them get stuck in this whole large scale data modernization strategies out the gate of just taking massive quantities of data and just moving them into another environment. And by the time it starts to done, it's already one budget cycle and they have no stories to tell on what value that whole exercise brought in. So it's like, small doses of value-based value creation helps to tell that story that starts to build towards something that's more longevity versus the typical approach that's out there. And it skipped through this slide, but essentially it's further enunciation of these rapid cycles of rapid prototyping and then finding the fit. And as the fit happens, then your pipelines are already ready and then built to scale and accelerate and scale and integrate into your application ecosystem. The solution that we did was essentially build a platform in this case that allowed for, and this is a bit more kind of an abstraction of the architecture, but it allowed for decoupling of model experimentation and building from model scaling and integration. So it created that sense of kind of a shared responsibility, but within the same environment, data scientists could focus on science part of the work, whereas the machine learning engineers could focus on the engineering side of the work with clearly defined handshakes that were also fully automated as this entire end-to-end architecture was built. But decoupling those roles, part of kind of like leading with the empathy and then letting people do the best that they're trained to do without overburdening with them with other responsibilities. So even like technical architecture was designed with that notion in mind, with that empathy-led approach. In addition to that, we brought this whole product-led approach to it. So we changed the whole dynamic from a waterfall and a large, massive projects to agile product ownership-based approach with a multidisciplinary, fully capable and independent team end-to-end, from your designers and engineers working together with end user in the center. And typically, we don't see the end user as part of the center. Is end user usually seen as an offshoot, but in this case, we actually brought end user as part of the sprint zero itself, with the product owners being responsible for, of course, the product strategy, and then keeping one foot in with the business stakeholders as well as with the development team. In addition to that, there's a multi-level partnership approach designed to drive this transformation, and starting with at the end user level bottom, like so creating a sense of like trust-based relationship between the end users, in this case, domain experts, with the technology team that's building the solution. So at that level, and then creating a sense of like evangelization at that level. So the whole thing is that when the solution is rolled out, let's not bring the technology folks to do the rollout, actually have these key members of this community be the ones who do the rollout and do the training, because then it's coming from their own community, right? It's not coming from outside. So that helps clear the gap there. And of course, middle management is where all the good ideas go to die in every company. And then the idea is, how do you bring that relationship? And that's where the product owner role becomes extremely crucial to become these evangelists and identify who are the promoters, who are the detractors, and leading with the empathy, trying to figure out what do we need to align on, what are the pain points, right? So a lot of that work to turn any potential detractors into potential advocates, or those who might be advocates, leveraging their network to continue to push the march for this transformation. And of course, and then at the top is your analytics leader, the chief data officer, who is cutting across the horizontal in the organization. And because all of this value-based storytelling and getting infused from the bottom up, then this analytics leader is better able to articulate that story at the top in the C-suite to continue to push this transformation that is a data-driven transformation. But in the end, yeah, I mean, we built this solution because this company is using it, driving a lot of value, planning efficiencies and acceleration of innovation. All of those, they replace gut-based decision-making to machine learning decision-making, and the experience. People talk about, they love the experience. And the experience notion is so crucial because our experiences for digital interactions are now informed by the best in class. So we expect that best in class experience from every other application that we interact with. And if we don't get that, that's actually a very, it's an extra bad experience in a way, because it's fairly abrasive, right? So the notion is that, how do we make sure that what we have already begun to expect as experiences, we are able to bring that to the table, so that people don't hate when they're opening their computers and turning an application on, like, I gotta waste my time with this again, right? And this was part of this. A lot of the discoveries was that many of these people just absolutely hated using this application. So kind of lovable experience element, that's a factor coming. And in this particular case, the company now managing 50% of their trade promotions. So trade promotions are the discounts in grocery, in your consumer packaged goods. So we go to grocery store and there's a yellow sticker with a discount on it. That's a trade, which a company puts in to ensure that their product moves off the shelf without cannibalizing on their own product line, and then hopefully having some additional halo on the rest of the product line. And then the adoption story is the big one. It's like the 95% of the adoption, tremendous value there. It's essentially, the imperative is be mindful of the impact of the AI throughout the journey. And that means human needs to be part of the cycle. Challenge and evolve the current task orientation AI design frameworks, which I talked about, but not just what we do, but why do we do what we do? And adopt a purposeful communal principles that are centered in the human to machine and machine to human interaction. So that's where that lovable experience comes into play. And yeah, and the bottom line is, then if you take these approaches, then we can create a better systems, and then smarter human and machine interaction systems that are rooted in trust and mindfulness to help people whose lives AI systems touch. I will stop right there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ahmer. This is really, really interesting and insightful. We have time for Q&A. I do want to be mindful of the clock, because I know you have family obligations this evening. So, but we do have, if you do,
Yeah, I'm happy to stay and take questions. Yeah.
Few minutes for Q&A. Feel free to either come off mute if you like and ask a question, or if you want to ask it in chat, either way is good. I do see a hand, or raise your digital hand, which I see Maria's hand is up.
Thank you. I just have a quick question, and thank you very much for this insightful presentation. You were talking about how important is to think of the end user in AI and machine learning, because yeah, the product is for them, right? But as a business analyst or product owners, what other skills do you think that should be important for us to be able to communicate well with the technical or the technology team, with the IT team?
Yeah, so that's a big question, and I think it's the part of the product owners that I've managed and then hired in the past. Part of the training had been in how do we bridge that gap and then have that communication. The key thing that I have been advocating for is to be the voice of the end consumer with the technical team, because technical team is not the one that's going to be interacting as often and as much with those folks that are going to be using the products or the subject matter experts. So being their voice is critical. And within that, going a little bit more specific, I would highly recommend taking some training programs in design thinking, how to do empathy mapping, how to do run these types of workshops that truly are empathy-led approaches to digging into those notions. There are some very good trainings out there. In addition to, of course, the whole product-centric approach and agile frameworks, I would highly recommend a design thinking as a framework to be kind of added to the skill sets. Larry?
Ahmer, this is Larry. When you mention design thinking, you know, that's a lot of it out there. Are you referring specifically to the work that was pioneered by the group at Stanford University?
Yep.
Okay.
I am, yes. And and I'm also a big fan of the Human-Centric AI Institute there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, hi, it's Mafaro. I liked how you called out that the biggest risk is people. So what do you think it will take for people to change their mind about AI as some sort of killer thing coming along to take their jobs?
Yeah, that's the big one, right? And we run into that, and I'll give you an example when I was from Nike and then some of the recent experiences as well, and also before Nike when I was at Sonic Automotive, and we built this AI-based predictive pricing engine, and we were going to take the responsibility of pricing away from car sales folks and then automate that through an AI. And a lot of the people in that case were scared that that will take their jobs away. And even though the notion was that it's not a replacement, it's an augmentation. It's an augmentation so that you can focus on what your expertise are. And with this, several times in my career, I've had to do different workshops around demystifying, number one, what AI is and it can and cannot do today. Number two, delivering to them that this is not a replacement, but this is an augmentation, and why. So for example, we did some studies, in this case, Six Sigma, Lean, those types of studies to see what people are doing, where their time is gone. A lot of the surveys and focus groups to understand with this planning community or for example, demand planners and supply planners, or other cases in automotive retail operations. And when people talk about like, oh, I'm just putting 30% of my time just downloading the data and putting it into an Excel, right? And then I have to call these three people to try to get this information. Then I get my experience or my gut feeling to put this out there. And by the time you get there, it's like 90% of the time is just gone into just collecting and gathering information. And people say like, well, I have 10 years of experience doing this. I've been doing merchandise planning for 15 years. And all I do is just move data. So when you start to hear from people, then it talks about what if we could simplify that pain point for you and automate some of that for you so that you can use your expertise and experiences. So case in point, in one of the demand sensing engines we were building, we brought in even something, and I have another deck I can share sometimes too, just simply talking about forecasting, what it is, right? Like really an abstract level of it, right? And what does error rate mean? And what does confidence means? And what if we can gain your confidence and trust in this system to where 60% of your pain points can be automated? So in this case, we're not talking about automating their job, but we're talking about automating and relieving their pain points so that we are able to create a cognitive capacity for them. So it's not just a time capacity, but it's a cognitive capacity for them to focus on. So if it's an exceptions-based planning, right? So 60%, they can check off, they're like, this looks good, I trust it. The next 30% may be where their experience and expertise are required to evaluate the results that the machine learning is generating to like, this makes sense, not make sense. Should I overwrite this? And this is why I'm going to overwrite it. But that's your expertise coming in, because AI is only as smart as the data that it learns from, and data is never complete. And then maybe the 10% is the one that AI will never be good at it. And that is where their human experience and expertise will be required to continue to do that work. And then perhaps over time, we can learn from it and then continue to augment that. So it's about positioning, and it's about communication, and it's about leading with their perspective, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I think with the future of work especially, that's going to be such an important distinction for people to understand.
Mm-hmm. And one other tool I've used, framework I've used is, it's a 2x2. If you think about data versus decisions, homogeneous to heterogeneous on both scales. So when you have homogeneous data driving homogeneous decisions, that's just straight up automation, RPAs and HIA, straight up automation. When it's heterogeneous information driving heterogeneous decisions, human brain cannot comprehend that amount of data and then drive that many decisions. Case in point, the real-time auction bidding for digital display ads. Like not within microseconds, an auction happens, a bid gets won, and a display ad is put on someone's screen that a company is willing to pay a little bit more than another company. And imagine like millions and millions of these transactions going on, right? Or high frequency trading in terms of like Wall Street, right? Human brain cannot do that. But when we are in this gray zone of homogeneous data driving heterogeneous decisions, that means that we're using some output that is synthesized, and we're using our own intuition and experiences and judgments on top of it to drive multiple potential outcomes and decisions. That's augmentation. If we're using synthesizing heterogeneous sets of data, machines can do that better for us and give us an actionable insight that we can use. And if we trust it, we can use that to drive a particular specific outcome and decision. So when we think about like enterprise decision making, like real-time auction bidding or high frequency trading, those were never people's job to begin with. They just should be automated. And the mundane stuff that's like data in, data out, like task in, task out, that should be automated so that we can create capacity to continue to push our human evolution and ingenuity forward, which is where the AI-enabled augmentation space comes into play, which is where majority of the enterprise decisions are going to be made.
I'll throw out one question if I may, Ahmer. In this context, I guess maybe I'm thinking of business analysts, product owners, data analysts, and so forth. Do you have any recommendations or guidance for those types of professionals who would like to learn more about the nuts and bolts of AI ML and learn more about its capabilities and also its limitations?
Yeah. Actually, no, I do. And I think that part of the demystification a little bit is understanding what it can and cannot and should and shouldn't do. There's a lot of snake oil out there. The joke is, if you are an AI startup, you tell VCs that it's AI. When you're hiring people, you tell them it's machine learning, and what gets implemented is a regression in the end. So there is a lot of this out there. There are some courses online, like Udemy recently launched a course for AI for business. It's primarily and specifically designed for people who are not coming from AI background. Microsoft Azure actually has several free courses on their ecosystem. There's one called AI for Business, and specifically designed for executive decision makers. So you don't have to be a technical person, but it's specifically designed for that. And I believe Azure offers that training for their enterprise clients and stuff too, as part of the transformation thing. So yeah, so between Azure, I'm sure AWS may have something, but I know for sure that Microsoft Azure has that. And then I recently saw a course on Udemy that is specifically designed for non-technical audience.
Ahmer, this is Larry. Can I supplement that? There are some great certification programs in this area too. I completed one down at the UCSC Extension Campus in Santa Clara, and you can often get funding for these. By the way, there's for example, if you're not working or working minimally, there's money available from government entities. Or if you are working, I think it'd be wise interest of the company you work for to invest in that kind of training, because it's unbelievable what you learn and the people you meet too.
No, I completely agree, and I would highly recommend product owners at enterprises to actually partner with the internal learning and development teams to add AI for business as part of the curriculum, because for enterprises to mature, this actually needs to become part of the overall training and curriculum program end to end. And I just put a link for one of the courses that I recently saw on Udemy. And I will show. And actually, I like this course because it takes more of a product-centric approach to it. So you get an overview of business analytics, defining the SMART goals about conducting a SWOT analysis, and then telling the stories and stuff like that. So it's specifically kind of designed for business audience. I think I just found that what's in the curriculum there. But I agree with you, Larry, there. And I put that in the chat here. Yeah.
Hey, Ahmer, I don't mean to dominate the questions, but I have another very interesting one for you. In certain AI fields that are extremely complex. One of them I've studied in sustainability is climate change, and effectively getting into climate change AI. Just studying and modeling climate change is an extremely complicated process. And some people in that field say that literally until they get to quantum computing, there's going to be a limit they reach. And of course, I think we're all fascinated when we do once see quantum computing on the forefront. Hopefully, a few years. I hope in our lifetimes. But is that something you looked into at all? Is quantum computing and what that can mean for the whole AI field in the future?
Yeah, I mean, quantum computing is an evolving field, and as data is becoming more complex because our lives are so digitally connected now, the complexity, the size, the volume, and the velocity at which all of this data is coming, today's storage and compute capacity absolutely cannot do justice, and it's actually a limitation. So for certain types of application that do require very complex mathematical computation across multiple layers, and then be able for us to be able to train very large scale, deep neural networks, deep reinforcement learning and stuff like that, quantum computing will be fairly crucial. I think it's a huge unlock for those types of applications. I would say most enterprises for their day-to-day business processes probably not going to benefit as much out the gate, but the spaces where we could potentially see this evolve would be in scientific research, climate research for sure, as well as in the, in my opinion, we may even see this evolve a little bit more in events-driven, events-based decision-making. There is a startup I've seen in Bay Area, I forgot the name, but they're specifically targeting themselves to become quantum computing AI experts. There's a group of PhDs, I forgot their name, but it'll be interesting to see. And they're really putting their bets on becoming the experts in quantum computing. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, because such a niche space, but somebody has to do it.
Ahmer, could you post that organization in the chat if you know it out?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Yeah.
Sounds intriguing.
Yes. And if I find it, I can also email it to Jay.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we may have time for one more question if anybody has something for Ahmer they'd like to inquire about. Not hearing anything, or maybe somebody's on mute, but yeah, and I see Maria's note. Thank you, Ahmer, for sharing this vast treasure trove of information and insight with us tonight.
Yeah.
This was really cool.
Oh, I found those companies. I'll see. I'll give you the names.
And maybe just for PR purposes, if everyone's okay with it, we'll take a quick. I'll do a quick screenshot just for the chapters page, which for people like me means I have to sit up straight and suck my gut in slightly. So, all right. And if anybody wants their picture, please feel free to enable your camera, or if not, no problem. All right, give me just 1 second here. I'm gonna do the classic print screen here. All right, big smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. I'm gonna save this and I'll take one more just in case somebody was blinking. All right, ready? 1, 2, and 3. Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much. For those who'd like to stay, we typically have just kind of informal networking after each of our chapter events. So if anybody wants to stay on for a few minutes and just talk shop about whether it's AI, ML, or you know, interest in learning more about that, folks who are diving into the pond, so to speak, at their organization, or would like to have questions about any of that.
Do you do that on recording, or are you gonna pause?
Yeah, I think we'll probably pause the recording.